Hey everyone, my name is Rick Gualtieri. This is Tales of a Midlist Author. I think kind of a short, what I assume is going to be a relatively short video today. Kind of, I guess, a little bit of a PSA, a little bit of a follow-up to the one I did a couple weeks back regarding the loneliest number. That one was dealing with the isolation that comes from being an author, just because this profession is typically a one-on-one thing, or a singular affair, if you will. What I wanted to talk, though, was a similar aspect that has maybe a little bit of a darker undertone, but I think maybe perhaps even a more important undertone, which is the message that you're not alone. Now, you've heard me expand about or expound upon the indie author community, and I think it's awesome. There's a lot of awesome people in there, hardworking, ethical, moral, just trying to make a living, trying to put the best stories out there that they can. But let's face facts. In every Eden, there are serpents, and there are plenty of predators and scammers out there. Now, in some cases, this is kind of like a short-term thing. Hey, hey, I paid a cover artist $100 and they disappeared with my money. That definitely does suck. Don't get me wrong. But there's also a long term, which is a little more sinister in nature. And don't get me wrong, the short term stuff should definitely be brought to light. I'm not making light of that, because let's be honest, nobody likes to be taken in, nobody likes to be scammed, any of that stuff. But there's longer term out there, which essentially kind of almost revolve around which in a sense almost cults of personality. We're talking on forums, we're talking marketers, we're talking kind of like quote unquote self-appointed gurus out there, and what you see happen is that they suck people in. Usually looking like wonderful people, looking like nice people. Hey, I just want to help your career. Hey, I just want to be your friend or so. And eventually, after a bit, you notice that kind of changes. Maybe eventually they turn on you, and they have everybody else there do the same thing. Maybe you see somebody else get turned on who didn't deserve it. Maybe you just are going down, and there's this gut feeling that this isn't right, and you want to get out of it, but it's difficult. And the reason it becomes difficult to walk away from a lot of these things is, as I mentioned, that whole cult of personality concept. Somebody who's kind of running, a long-term scam or a long-term, something like this, they're looking to kind of isolate you. They're looking to instill fear in you. They're trying to give you reasons why you can't walk away. It's not entirely unlike abuse, and honestly, this PSA can really go for really a whole variety of scenarios. But I'm trying to really dialing it back and for the indie author community, for you as writers out there who are in this business. I've seen this happen, unfortunately, in my 6 or 7 years in this business. People get in too deep with something. Maybe they get in with the wrong crowd. And the thing is, after a while, they feel that they feel like some of them say, okay, enough is enough, and they walk away, and whatever the consequences, they deal with. Others, well, they feel like they're kind of stuck, because there comes that sense of isolation. There's usually a sense of us versus them in in a lot of this stuff. It's like, well, hey, stick with me, because I'm the only one who has your good, I guess, who has your best interest at heart. And eventually, if their kind of scummery starts to kind of come out into public, then it's kind of like, well, those people are against us. They don't want us to succeed. I want to succeed, and stuff like that. But typically, I've heard more than one horror story of people who've just said, well, I've isolated myself from from other authors, but now I'm afraid to leave this group, because then I'll have nobody. And that's really what kind of the thing I want to talk to you about is that's untrue. There are a lot of good people in this business. As I said, the indie author community is a very strong one. We've come together in the past with against various things. I believe probably the most extreme example was Cockeygate a while back, in which pretty much indie and traditional and trad pub authors just kind of came together and said, no, this is wrong. But the thing is, even if even if people have like gotten really ticked at you for a reason or so, which like it happens, let's be honest. The reality is, those of us who are out there who are really just trying to make a living, tell the best stories we can. We're not trying to break Amazon's terms of service. We're not trying to scam anybody, any of that stuff. The reality is that a lot of us don't want to see anybody else don't want to see somebody become a victim. And if you are a victim, we're willing to kind of at the very least, be an ear and listen. And I understand it can be difficult. As I said, there's that feeling of isolation. Sometimes it's the fear. Sometimes there's the threat of, hey, go walk away and talk to somebody, and I'll destroy your career. That's kind of like the big thing is give somebody a little bit of power, and suddenly it's like, well, I'll destroy your career. Newsflash, in a lot of cases, that's easier said than done. But the thing is, the reality is a lot of these things can exist because of that isolation and that fear, because people are afraid to talk. The thing is, there's power in numbers. There's power in the community, and sometimes it just helps to talk. Like I said, you can talk in private. There's nothing wrong with that. Talking in public, honestly, I think that's even better because, think of cockroaches scurrying when you turn the lights on. That's in a lot of cases what happens here is, there is that power to be said of you coming out and being like, okay, this person has done this to me. Here's my here's my proof. Here's my story. And I say proof, but sometimes it is proof. You probably have maybe an email chain. Sometimes it is just your story. And a lot of people are willing to, and people will be willing to listen. And hey, there will possibly be questions because I think there's also been cases of people crying wolf before. Nobody likes that. I would recommend heavily against that. If you just had a bad experience with a vendor, don't suddenly show up and with tales of well, okay, I lost $50 to them, but hey, they destroyed my life because of this and this, which isn't true. I would very much avoid that because it just it just makes it's insulting to real victims, and it really doesn't help anything. But if you have ever experienced any of this, I'm just saying that people will listen, people will give advice, and sometimes there's just that strength of knowing that other people have gone through this, and just putting it out there will help other people from getting sucked into it. So that's the other thing. Now, there's plenty of places to find the author community. Facebook, Twitter. There's plenty of authors on there. There is K-boards. I've mentioned K-boards in the past. I'm pulling a little bit back from my recommendation there only because they have a new ownership and there's some stuff going on. But there are still plenty of authors there. There's other author boards out there. Ask around, talk to people, reach out. And I guarantee you're going to find, you're going to find people willing to listen. At the very least, I'm going to put my email down at the bottom here. I'm a sympathetic ear. If you listen to these videos, I don't like a lot of this underhanded dirtbaggery. I try to run my business on the up and up. I'm here to tell stories. I'm not here to screw around with with my readers. I'm not here to screw around with other authors. I'm trying to make friends. I'm trying to make contacts in the business, but I'm trying to do it all in an ethical manner, without breaking rules, without taking shortcuts, building my readership one reader at a time. And there's plenty others like that. And they're really not that hard to find. And once a story kind of comes out in the open, you're usually going to find that that community is pretty supportive. Again. I mentioned no crying wolf because that does happen on occasion, and unfortunately it paints everybody in a bad light. But the main thing though is you should never ever feel alone in this industry. And honestly, if you step past that in any aspect of life, if you're suffering abuse, you should never feel alone. There's always going to be people willing to listen, willing to help, all of that stuff. So. That's just a quick PSA follow-up to my loneliest number, one from a few weeks ago. Like I said, it's a little more serious topic here, but I think it's an important one to mention because it's been mentioned a lot of times, but it's also in a I guess a series like this, it's often not. And I think it is important to to put out there. So just remember, you're not alone out there, and you should never ever feel that that isolation or that fear, because there's plenty of people who really do not want that. Um, you know, that's pretty much about all I have to say on that. Um, you know, I think only working together can we really just um, you know, keep this business clean above water, and make sure that everybody has a fair shot at it. Anyway, my name is Rick Gualtieri. This is Tales of Midlist Author. I hope this has been helpful. And like I said, if you want, feel free to reach out. I am definitely a sympathetic ear. And if not, please reach out to to someone or someone's. I guarantee, as I said, you're not alone out there. So I will talk to you again really soon. And well, have a good one.